This week on For the Record.
Being on the state Supreme Court, I have an opportunity to address issues and matters that are of statewide importance, not just locally.
A second candidate enters the race for the open Wisconsin Supreme Court seat. We sit down with Judge Maria Lazar 2 weeks into her campaign. And later, the government shutdown continues. We speak with Wisconsin's lawmakers in Washington about how long it could go on for.
What we're seeing is Democrats in the United States Senate putting politics in front of people. It's beyond frustrating.
I think that's going to be up to the Republican leadership. So right now, their track record on truthfulness isn't so good.
That's all coming up this morning.
We now present For the Record.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Ellie LaLiberte. Just 3 months ago, Wisconsinites chose who they wanted to fill a seat on the state's highest court. And in April of 2026, they'll do it once again. 2 candidates are vying for that seat right now. Before we get into that, let's look at why this race is such a big deal. Last spring, spending for the Wisconsin Supreme Court was roughly $100 million, according to the Brennan Center for Law. It's the most expensive judicial race in U.S. history. To put that into perspective, spending in the 2025 race alone amounted to how much was spent on 68 Supreme Court elections across 26 states in 2021 and 2022 combined. We even saw the likes of Elon Musk and George Soros pouring cash into the race. But why was it important enough to get their attention? Well, it was the deciding factor in who would have the ideological majority of the court. And Democratic-backed Susan Crawford's victory over Republican-backed Brad Schimmel was a big deal for Democrats after the November loss in the presidential election. And while the state Supreme Court is technically a nonpartisan race, it's become increasingly political in recent years. Liberal candidates have won 4 of the past 5 Supreme Court races. And even if liberals lose the April election, they will still hold the majority through at least 2028. So far in the 2026 race, we have candidates from both sides of the ideological spectrum running. Justice Chris Taylor is deemed the liberal. She currently serves on District 4 Court in the Court of Appeals in Madison and previously served in the state assembly as a Democrat. And the newest candidate, Justice Maria Lazar, is deemed the conservative. Lazar is currently on the Wisconsin Court of Appeals in District 2 and previously worked as an assistant attorney general during former Governor Scott Walker's administration. Lazar's announcement for the seat came after conservative Justice Rebecca Bradley announced she would not seek re-election on the Supreme Court. We sat down with Lazar this week and asked her how much money she needs to raise to be competitive.
That's an interesting question. We just got into this race. I think I always look at my watch. It's 15 days now, so I'm not sure where it's going to stand and where the money would have to be. But the question is not so much as the money you need to raise to run this race. The question is how you need to reach everyone in the state.
So is there a dollar amount that you are looking at right now?
I have nothing. You'd have to actually talk to my people about what they're thinking. I can tell you that I don't think in any way, shape, or form whatsoever that we're going to hit the numbers they hit last year.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about that too because we saw Elon Musk, for example, pouring in a lot of money. So if you were to look to campaign and raise money, where would that come from for you?
Where am I looking to fundraise?
Yes.
One, again, judges we don't ask for money, that we're not ethically allowed to do that. The areas where we fundraise are people who look at my website, hear me speak, who think that they respect my intention to bring integrity back to this court, and those individuals will hopefully donate to their time or their money or their assistance to move me forward and put me into the position where I can be on the state Supreme Court.
Now, we also asked Lazar what her first pitch to voters is.
I think it's really important that we stop the races that have been happening in the state of Wisconsin, where we're turning our judicial races, which are nonpartisan, into political races, and we're looking to put politicians or legislators on that court. I have always been independent. I've always been a judge who's actually looked at the rules, looked at the laws, looked at the facts, and looked at everything like that.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, Lazar previously worked as an assistant attorney general to Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen in former Republican Governor Scott Walker's administration. In 2011, Walker signed Wisconsin Act 10 into law, essentially ending collective bargaining for most public employees. The decision led to an eruption of protests, and during our interview, we asked Lazar about the role she played when Act 10 was challenged. You were previously Assistant Attorney General to former Governor Scott Walker.
Well, actually, I was an Assistant Attorney General. It was not for Scott Walker. I was under J.B. Van Hollen and then Brad Schimmel. But go on.
Well, you defended Act 10 in court.
I defended part of Act 10 in court. But what's the question?
Well, a circuit court judge ruled in December that the law is unconstitutional, but put a hold pending an appeal. Now, if this were to make its way back to the Supreme Court, would you recuse yourself from that decision?
No, and I'll explain why. So when I was working for the Attorney General's office as an Assistant Attorney General, one of many of them, about over 150, we were not allowed to take cases that impacted our benefits as state employees. There was one Assistant Attorney General who was not in the union that we all had to join, and he was the one who did that. So the Act 10 case that I worked on was just specifically, was this law, any law, was this law properly passed by the legislature and enacted into a law by Secretary La Follette? And that was the only question I dealt with. After my case, when the state Supreme Court said yes, it was properly published, it was properly put forward, then they started going to the merits of Act 10. I had nothing whatsoever to do with any case that involved the merits of Act 10. So there's no reason that I would see at this point in time that I would have to recuse. Now, obviously, if the case comes up and I see that there are people who, if it's someone I know who's involved as a party, then I'd have to have another look at that. But as of right now, as to the merits, I have no basis to recuse.
Now, Lazar served as lead counsel for the initial lawsuits filed over Act 10. That's according to her own press release that announced her candidacy for the Court of Appeals in 2021. Now, in response to Lazar's campaign announcement, Judge Chris Taylor's campaign manager released this statement, reading in part, quote, "If elected, Maria Lazar would be the most extreme member of the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It's no surprise that she's backed by the same right-wing billionaires who tried unsuccessfully to buy a seat on our Supreme Court last April, which Wisconsinites overwhelmingly rejected." Can I get your response to that? I can see you smiling a little bit now.
So, well, first I'd say extreme member, I'm assuming they're saying on the conservative side. Well, when you have only 3 members that are on that side, and you have one who kind of flips back and forth occasionally, obviously I would be more to the other side of that individual. And I don't know if Justice Ziegler, former Chief Justice Ziegler, now Justice Ziegler, and I don't know if our philosophies align, so we may actually be on the same course, so I don't know that I would be the most extreme. And I'm assuming you're saying extreme right, which they're leaving out, because maybe I could say who's the most extreme left on that court.
Now, there's much more to that conversation with Judge Lazar. You can find our full conversation on channel3000.com. The election is April 7th. If any other candidates join the race, however, there will be a primary on February 17th. And now to the governor's race. Former Wisconsin Democratic Party Chair Ben Wickler released a statement Thursday announcing he will not be running. Wickler was considered a contender after choosing to leave his role as the head of Wis Dems. His statement reads in part, quote, "Our goal must be not just to win the governor's race, but also to flip the state assembly and the state senate majorities. Then we will finally pass the hugely popular, urgently needed laws that would make Wisconsin work for regular people." And next on For the Record, the latest from Washington as the government shutdown continues. We speak to lawmakers representing Wisconsin from both sides of the aisle. Welcome back to For the Record. We're more than 2 weeks into the government shutdown after 10 votes on the funding bill failed in the Senate over disagreements on whether to include an extension to the Affordable Care Act tax credits. The chamber's next vote isn't until October 20th, making this one of the longest shutdowns in U.S. history. We spoke with Wisconsin lawmakers on either side of this fight, but let's start with Republican Congressman Brian Stile, who joined us earlier. What would the timeline look like to reopen the government right now?
Well, the moment there are 60 votes in the United States Senate to overcome the Democrat filibuster, we could have a vote to reopen the government immediately. Frustratingly, Democrats, including leader Chuck Schumer, refuse to do that. And again, this is a clean CR, no policy adjustments, continuing funding at current rates. It's functionally the same bill that Democrats voted for earlier this year. What changed is the politics, and what we're seeing is Democrats in the United States Senate putting politics in front of people. It's beyond frustrating.
And do you think Republicans are at a point right now where they can get those votes?
Well, Well, we have seen a few Democrats come across the line. The Democratic senator from Pennsylvania and others have voted to keep the government open, recognizing that that is the responsible thing to do. The consequences of the Schumer shutdown continue to build. More and more people are getting hurt. Number of people are not receiving their full paycheck due to the Schumer shutdown. And so hopefully Democrats in the Senate come to their senses, reopen the government, and allow us to complete the negotiations that are in front of us.
So what do you say to Wisconsinites right now who could see their premiums go up?
I'd say call your Democratic senator and ask them to open the government immediately so that we can finish these negotiations to address the rising cost of health care.
Democrats have been critical of GOP leadership, specifically for keeping the House out of session for the last 4 weeks. Do you believe that the House should return?
The House has done its job. The House passed a clean CR now 4 weeks ago. And so the work is in the United States Senate to find 60 votes. Frustratingly, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are utilizing the filibuster to prevent the government from being funded. They're holding pay for essential workers hostage to try to drive their political agenda.
Let's go now to Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan and why he says the shutdown has lasted so long. How long do you think this will last?
I think that's going to be up to the Republican leadership. They haven't called us back in. This was our 4th week of paid vacation that the House Republicans have not come to Washington. I've been there. I was there Tuesday and Wednesday, hoping that they would do the right thing and come. But, you know, this isn't just about holding your breath over a shutdown. We have a farm bill that's 2 years overdue. We have a bunch of other bills, reauthorizations that have to happen. And the fact that Congress just thinks that we can do nothing and have pina coladas at home is not a good idea.
House Republicans would argue on that side that they've kind of done their job here and it's up to the Senate now.
It's ridiculous, right? I mean, we all know there's many other bills. I think about 12,000 plus bills get introduced in Congress every session, right? There's other things we can do. It's just such a stupid argument.
Well, and Republicans said that they won't come to the table quite yet, and they'll be ready to talk about some of these tax subsidies after the shutdown is ended. What do you think about that?
So right now, their track record on truthfulness isn't so good. So what we're saying is right now in Wisconsin next week, people will get their rate increases for the Affordable Care Act. People right now who are employers are getting their rate increases for next year for their group health plans. This is the time to deal with this. If you do it after all the rate increases come out, people are going to be paying a whole lot more for health insurance, which is what we're fighting in the first place. So it sounds like a lot of rhetoric, but it's not rhetoric that's going to bring down the bills of health care for anyone in Wisconsin, and it's certainly not going to help the 15 million people that are likely to lose their health insurance.
And kind of on the other side of this coin now are federal workers here in Wisconsin that are going unpaid during the shutdown. What would you say to those individuals right now who may be struggling because of the shutdown?
Yeah, I think the federal employees are some of the heroes. You know, they're saying keep the government closed because this is about a bigger fight than just them. The fact that they're the ones telling us to continue this fight for everyone, the broader public, that really says something about how strong our federal employees are and how much they care about their jobs and helping the public.
Hear our full conversation on channel3000.com. And as congressional Democrats and Republicans continue to put the blame on each other for the shutdown, social services around the country are seeing the impact. That includes the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, or WIC. The program provides services to nearly 60,000 families across Wisconsin. In its effort to keep WIC up and funded, the federal government has allocated $300 million in unspent tariff revenue for the next few weeks. But if the shutdown continues into November, these benefits could be at risk. Democratic Representative Renuka Mayadev authored a bill calling for the state to appropriate funds to the WIC program. The legislation is currently circulating for co-sponsorship. For now, WIC benefits and appointments are available. And the National Weather Service and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, are weathering the storm throughout the shutdown. The department employees are working without pay during the shutdown, meaning you'll still get your daily forecast and weather warnings. UW-Madison Research Program Manager Chris Vigaski says after significant federal cuts to the National Weather Service, the shutdown stresses an already strained department.
It was seen that after all of those cuts that we really needed to have a full staff of the National Weather Service to be able to get all the forecasting and all the warnings and everything done that we needed. But now with the shutdown, we can't continue with that hiring process, and that just pushes this stressed staff at the Weather Service even further, because it's going to take, once people are hired, 6, 8, 12 months before they're fully involved in the Weather Service. So it's just making that a longer process before the Weather Service is fully back and functional.
Vic Askey also says the shutdown could have a monetary impact, as he says FEMA's disaster relief fund is starting to get dangerously low.
When that runs out, there's only about $7.5 billion left as of last month. So when that money runs out, that needs congressional approval to refill the DRF. And it doesn't take a major hurricane to drain that. You know, we had the flooding in Milwaukee this summer. That costs money. So it doesn't take a really big event, and luckily we haven't had that. But any sort of disasters that we see will cause that to drain down, and that will affect our ability to protect people or help them recover if this continues onward.
And for the record, we'll be back right after this. Several airports across the country are choosing not to play a video from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, including here in Dane County. In the video, Noem blames Democrats for the federal government shutdown and its impacts on travel times at airports. An official from the Dane County Regional Airport says they will not play the video on their equipment. It remains unclear whether the TSA will play video on equipment of its own. Experts say the video violates the Hatch Act. That's a law congressional Republicans spearheaded in the 80s to prevent the federal government from using governmental resources for political activity.
When you name the opposition party, yeah, you've gone way past the line. It's in the rearview mirror. A very clear violation of the Hatch Act, in my view. Historically, and according to the Constitution and established practice, if a government thinks a law is unconstitutional, they go to court and challenge it. To simply defy it and then challenge it after the fact, I hate to use such strong language, but this is just lawlessness.
Now, depending on how long the shutdown lasts, the battle over whether airports will play Noem's video could intensify.
The likely scenario that will occur is one or another of these airport officials will be fired or ordered to post a video or risk being fired. They'll go to court and challenge that action by the government. There will be an injunction, an order from a lower court, a federal district court, saying, no, you may not require airports to post these videos, because the Hatch Act is quite clear, and lower courts are not permitted to say, we don't like this federal law, or we think this federal law is unconstitutional. They have to issue injunctions to enforce existing federal law. At that point, the next step would be, as we've seen over and over, an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court to have that injunction lifted. And that's procedurally how this would be likely to play out.
Now, we reached out to the airport on the matter. Their statement reads, quote, the TSA is a tenant of the airport and operates within its owned leased space. As part of that leasehold, TSA displays federal and agency-specific signs and messages within their leased space. These displays are managed by the TSA and the federal government, not Dane County or the Dane County Regional Airport. Well, two bills are headed to the governor's desk aimed at addressing funding and staffing issues for Wisconsin's EMS providers. If signed into law, it would reimburse people taking EMS classes at Wisconsin Technical College for completion of the course and training. It would also send money to technical colleges to help them fund classes and prevent cancellations. It would create an exemption in the expenditure restraint incentive program, allowing joint fire and EMS districts to benefit from more funding from cities and municipalities.
We have county-wide exemptions for levy limits, but our coverage areas for our EMS units don't always follow a county line. Okay, so this would enable them to work with an adjoining neighbor and hopefully provide joint services.
The legislation also creates a Pilot Live 911 program, new technology that allows dispatchers to connect to a caller via video to better respond, give instructions, and pass info to first responders. The legislation received bipartisan support. And the state Senate also passed a measure this week that would require school boards across the state to adopt policies banning cell phones in schools. According to polling from Marquette University, 72% of Wisconsinites support banning cell phones in schools entirely. And 89% support banning them during instructional time. Now, there are exemptions in the bill for use of a cell phone in the event of a threat, medical necessity, or when a teacher deems it appropriate. The bill now heads to Governor Evers' desk for final approval. And a new bipartisan bill would make sports betting legal in Wisconsin. The legislation would amend a current Wisconsin statute to exclude the definition of bet. This change enables tribes and the states to utilize a legally recognized hub and spoke model left standing by the U.S. Supreme Court back in 2024. This model allows tribes to offer statewide mobile sports betting. The bill's authors argue the legislation would protect Wisconsinites from scams, generate new revenue, and better align with federal standards. The bill is also currently circulating for co-sponsorship. And next on For the Record, first responders honored this week at the state capitol. Meet one of those heroes when we come back. Before you go, first responders from across the state were recognized at the state capitol this week. One of the officers honored at the 2025 Wisconsin First Responders of the Year award ceremony on Tuesday was UW-Madison police officer Derek Austin. His department nominated him in the 77th Assembly District. Officer Austin, along with his K-9 Mavy, were one of the first to respond in the ALCS shooting back in December.
It's just something that I've always wanted to do. I enjoy being outside and working with people and helping the community, and it was just that internal fire that I had to do this kind of a job.
And that does it for us this week. And a reminder, you can watch full episodes of the show as well as expanded interviews on our website, channel3000.com. Have a great rest of your weekend. For the Record, I'm Ellie LaLiberte.
This has been For the Record.